In the 1950s, a wave of terror swept across Thailand, and at its center was one name: Si Ouey. He was accused of the unthinkable preying on children, murdering them and consuming their organs. The media branded him a monster, a cannibal serial killer unlike any other. His name became a chilling whisper used by parents to frighten their children into obedience. But beneath the horrifying legend, there's a different story. A truth that for decades remained buried under layers of fear and Si Ouey was a poor Chinese immigrant, struggling to survive in a land where he couldn't speak the language. The case against him was built on flimsy evidence and questionable confessions. Some of the crimes he was accused of happened in different provinces at the very same time. His confession, the cornerstone of the prosecution, may have been beaten out of him. In 1959, he was executed, his name forever etched into Thai history as a symbol of pure evil. For over 60 years, his mummified body was displayed in a glass case, a grim warning to all. It wasn't until 2020 that a new generation of Thais, armed with skepticism and a demand for justice, fought to give him a final, dignified farewell. His body was at last cremated, closing a dark chapter. Today, a growing number of people believe Si Ouey was never a monster at all. Instead, he may have been the ultimate victim, a man destroyed by fear, prejudice, and a deeply flawed justice system. To understand how a man became a myth, we have to go back to the Thailand of the mid-20th century. It was a nation in transition, a place where modern forensic science was still in its infancy. Police investigations were not driven by DNA or fingerprints. They were driven by confessions, which were often seen as the ultimate proof of guilt. In the city's newspapers were locked in a fierce battle for readers, and nothing sold copies like shocking, sensational headlines. In this environment, fear spread like wildfire, far faster than any verifiable fact. It was into this world that Si Ouey Sae Urng, an impoverished Chinese immigrant laborer, arrived, unknowingly stepping onto a stage where he would be cast as the nation's greatest villain. So, who was the real Si? He was born in Shantou, China, and, like countless others of his generation, migrated to Thailand in search of a better life. He found only hardship. He drifted from province to province, taking whatever grueling manual labor jobs he could find, from hauling vegetables to burning charcoal. He existed on the absolute margins of society. He was desperately poor, illiterate, and spoke only a few broken words of Thai. In a society that valued connections and status, he had none. He had no powerful family to defend him, no access to legal support, and no social safety net to catch him. To the world, he was utterly invisible. That is, until the day he was arrested. The turning point came in 1958 in the province of Rae. Si Ouey was arrested after being accused of murdering a young boy. What happened next, during his police interrogation, would seal his fate. Authorities announced that Si Ouey had confessed. But he didn't just confess to one murder. Police claimed he admitted to a string of child killings that spanned multiple provinces, creating the terrifying picture of a nomadic predator. Police and media reports painted a gruesome picture, claiming that Si Ouey had a ritual of eating his victims' internal organs, especially the heart and liver. They alleged he did this based on a dark belief that it would grant him supernatural strength and longevity. This single, unproven detail transformed a criminal case into the stuff of nightmares. The newspapers exploded. The media frenzy was immediate, and all Thai newspapers depicted Si Ouey not as a man, but as a demonic entity. Sensational headlines screamed of the human-eating monster who stalked the countryside. His photograph was plastered everywhere, his face becoming synonymous with terror. A palpable fear gripped the nation, and parents looked at their children with a new sense of dread. Soon, the myth of Si Ouey detached from the facts of the case and took on a life of its own. His name became a powerful tool, a boogeyman invoked to discipline children. If you don't behave, Si Ouey will come and get you. Be good, or Si Ouey will eat your liver. For generations, Thai children grew up with this terrifying refrain ringing in their ears. The story was told so often and with such conviction that few ever stopped to question if it was even true. The man had been replaced by the monster. When Si Ouey's case finally reached the courtroom, the trial was By any modern standard, a catastrophic failure of justice. The prosecution's case was riddled with holes. There was no solid forensic evidence, no fingerprints or physical traces to conclusively link him to the multiple murders he had supposedly committed. In fact, a closer look at the timeline revealed a glaring impossibility. Some of the murders he allegedly confessed to occurred in different, distant locations at roughly the same time, making it physically impossible for a single person to have been responsible for all of them. The entire case rested almost exclusively on the confession. These confessions were obtained during days of intense police interrogation without a lawyer or a competent translator present, raising profound concerns about coercion and torture common practices at the time. Si Ouey, who could barely understand the language he was being questioned in, was left to face the full weight of the state alone. Despite these deep and disturbing problems, the court accepted the confessions as fact. In 1959, Si Ouey was convicted and swiftly executed by firing squad. But the story did not end with his death. His execution was not the final chapter. It was the beginning of a new, macabre legend. Instead of being given a proper burial, Si Ouey's body was sent to the Si Ouey Medical Museum in Bangkok. There, it was mummified, preserved in wax, and put on public display in a standing glass case. For the next 60 years, millions of visitors, including countless school children on field trips, would file past his remains. To the museum, it was an educational exhibit. To others, it was a deeply unsettling spectacle. A man who was quite possibly innocent had been transformed into a permanent object of fear and morbid curiosity, denied peace even in death. Decades passed, but the ghosts of Si Ouey lingered. As Thailand modernized, a new generation of journalists, historians, and human rights advocates began to look back at the case, not with the fearful eyes of the 1950s, but with a critical, modern lens. They meticulously sifted through the old court documents, police records, and newspaper archives. What they found was a cascade of serious inconsistencies. They discovered there was never any medical proof of cannibalism. The shocking detail that defined his legacy was based entirely on rumor and a forced confession. They confirmed there was no physical evidence connecting Si Ouey to most of the murders. They analyzed his confessions and found they were filled with contradictions and did not align with known timelines or locations. The patterns they saw were chillingly consistent with forced confessions, a dark but well-documented tool used by police in that era to close cases quickly. Slowly but surely, public opinion began to shift. The question was no longer a simple one of good versus evil. It was no longer how evil was Si Ouey. Instead, a more haunting question began to take its place. What if he was never guilty at all? Today, many scholars and researchers believe Si Ouey was a classic scapegoat. He was the perfect person to blame during a time of intense social anxiety and moral panic. He was a poor, marginalized outsider, an easy target for a system that needed a villain. His case is now seen as a tragic reflection of the darkest impulses of a society under pressure. It highlights the ugly reality of racism toward immigrants, who are often the first to be suspected and the last to be believed. It exposes the terrifying potential for the abuse of police power when accountability is weak. It serves as a stark warning about the danger of trusting confessions without question and the need for solid, verifiable evidence. And most of all, it shows how a powerful myth, fueled by a sensationalist media, can completely overwhelm the truth. Si Ouey became a monster not because of the things he did, but because society needed one. The final, quiet chapter of this long and tragic story unfolded in 2020, following years of public campaigning and growing criticism over the ghoulish display of his body. The Si Ouey Medical Museum made a historic decision. Si Ouey's mummified remains were finally removed from the glass case. After a small Buddhist ceremony, his body was It was a simple, understated act, but it was profoundly powerful. For the first time in over 60 years, the man at the center of the legend was treated not as a monster, an exhibit, or a warning, but simply as a human being, granted the basic dignity he had been denied for so long. For many Thais today, the name Si Ouey no longer conjures the image of a cannibal lurking in the shadows. Instead, it represents one of the country's most profound and tragic miscarriages of justice. His story has become a powerful, cautionary tale, a permanent reminder for future generations. It reminds us that fear is a force that can blind us and destroy the truth. It reminds us that the media holds the immense power to create monsters, sometimes out of thin air. And it teaches us that sometimes the real horror is not the crime itself, but the system that rushes to condemn without certainty, and the society that is too quick to believe